We're going to get to in a minute Biden's big speech and this ceasefire proposal that may be his, maybe Israel's, maybe Hamas's. We'll get to all of that with our guests in a minute, but we have some other major breaking news with regard to Israel and Joe Biden. Let's put this up on the screen. So Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, fresh off of likely facing International Criminal Court arrest warrants, has now officially been invited to deliver an address to Congress. We can put this up on the screen. All 4 congressional leaders signed off on this invitation after weeks of delay. The letter just went out. So, Saagar, thanks to Mike Johnson, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, and Hakeem Jeffries, the true bipartisan Uniparty coming together, all of them to invite a man who continues to carpet bomb babies and incinerate children inside of tents where they've been displaced.
What is so foolish about this is I do not understand how the Israeli establishment and how the US Congress did not learn its lesson from 2015. That moment, I mean, and you'll definitely know this, Krystal, back during the Iran deal at that time, the consensus around Israel was probably 10 times more ironclad than it is today. And look, I know what everybody thinks, but that means you really can't imagine what it was like back then. What broke open any ability to even criticize an Israeli prime minister was the flagrant violation of international norms of an Israeli prime minister coming to the United States at the behest of the opposition party to openly speak against the international priority and the foreign policy priority of the president of the United States, who at that time was Barack Obama. That little thing cracked open the ability to criticize AIPAC, which mobilized against the Iran deal, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and actually gave Democrats the ability to back their president, Barack Obama, against the leader, Netanyahu. And from that very, very day, the Israeli party, or the Israeli government, has basically aligned itself fully with the Republican Party, where the Republican Party will always 100% go to bat for Israel. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like the Democratic Party of today has not been also going along with it. But as you and I know, with the base where they are, and the younger voters, on top of enough of, these people don't get enough attention. It's not just the Ilhan Omars of the world. There's a lot, Rokan, many others.
Jamal Bowman. And he is risking his seat to take that stance.
These are not household names, but who are out there being like, listen, I'm not voting for this anymore. That is still extraordinary. Never would have happened.
Or even more remarkable, like a Chris Van Hollen.
Right, a Chris Van Hollen.
Listen, again, he's continued to vote for A, but the fact that he even talks differently about
Elizabeth Warren, right?
This standard issue Democrat, who's like close to leadership, that will even talk critically of Israel, speak critically of the Biden administration's approach to Israel. It is different than it was even just a few years ago. I mean, it's just remarkable to me because, again, this goes back to what we were talking about in the Ukraine segment. All the talk about human rights, international law, Putin's a war criminal, all of this stuff. Bibi Netanyahu is facing arrest warrants from the ICC for war crimes. The ICJ has just, on the heels of them saying, or after they said this is like plausibly a genocide and we're going to investigate, now they've issued an injunction saying you have to stop this invasion of Rafah. They did not stop the invasion of Rafah. Not only that, Biden himself claimed there was a red line with regard to invasion of Rafah that they completely blew past, and there's a full-on invasion, completely humiliating him and once again exposing his total weakness. You have Bibi's own government falling apart, Benny Gantz and Yoav Gallant, who are the other 2 ministers in the war cabinet. So it's Bibi, Yoav Gallant, and Benny Gantz. So those 2 are basically ready to quit the war cabinet. The country is in chaos with, mass protests and huge divisions over what to do going forward. Just with regard to the hostages, they, overwhelmingly support the extent and the horror of these wars. The society does, but nevertheless, he's on the rocks. You had Chuck Schumer previously where he gave a whole big
he was
speech.
Like, he needs to go.
Calling for regime change. What happened to that? What happened to that? And now's the moment when you're going to rescue this guy with this huge honor and have him come and address Congress? Like, it's just grotesque. It's honestly just grotesque for them to do this at this moment. And on top of this, we have additional Biden officials who continue to resign over just unconscionable situations that they are being put in. So this is Alex Smith. He was interviewed over on Democracy Now! He's a former contractor for USAID. He says he was pushed out of USAID, Samantha Power, big humanitarian, et cetera, wrote a whole book about genocide. after he made a presentation on maternal and child health impacts of the Israeli war on Gaza. They told him, you can either resign or get fired. How dare you write a report about maternal and child health impacts of the war on Gaza? He decided to resign. Here is what he had to say to Democracy Now!
I was told to remove words like Palestine, Palestinians, Israel-Gaza border, and several others. And then there was a column of preferred language. I went along with that. I removed the word Palestine from the organization name UNFPA Palestine because that was objected to. I removed a map that UN OCHA provided that was acknowledged as an accurate map, but that couldn't be included because it showed the borders and the sea borders of Gaza. Also on that Monday, I was told this is a very sensitive issue because an hour before we were having our chat, the ICC request for an indictment came down from the prosecutor. And so I was told that it's a sensitive issue because of that. I mentioned that I was a legal fellow at the ICC back when I was in law school, that I had worked on specifically starvation as a weapon of war, and that was an area of interest of mine, and that I thought it would be useful to talk about international humanitarian law frameworks as they apply to every country, Gaza included. And I think that set off alarm bells. There were many more layers of editing, and then on Tuesday I was told that the presentation was canceled. Before I was told the presentation was deleted from the conference website.
Congressmember Castro said, so there's famine already occurring there? Samantha Power said, yes. Castro then asked Power how many children were at risk of dying in the coming weeks due to famine. She said, in northern Gaza, the rate of malnutrition prior to October 7th was almost 0. It's now 1 in 3. 1 in 3 kids. So was she aware of the demand that was made of you to change all the language?
I don't know. I don't know who in leadership was told about the presentation. I know that there was a lot of chatter that I wasn't privy to about my presentation in the days leading up to it. But I don't know if she has seen the presentation slides or my resignation letter.
So in addition, we covered last week a State Department official named Stacey Gilbert, who also had resigned. We're getting more details over the specifics of her resignation. You can put this up on the screen. So she'd sent an email to her colleagues explaining she was leaving because of an official finding by the department she worked in that Israel was not deliberately obstructing the flow of food or other aid into Gaza. According to the Post, she took issue in particular with the former State Department report to Congress on May 10th, noting Israel did not fully cooperate in the first months of the Gaza war, but that it had significantly increased humanitarian access more recently. In fact, after a spike in humanitarian deliveries in late April and early May, they have fallen to near 0 in the weeks since. So she's effectively, Saagar, blowing the whistle at this point, saying this report was a crock. They're just lying in this report, and it's an untenable situation for me as a professional, and that is why she decided to resign. So you have, in both instances, officials resigning over the suppression of accurate information about what Israel is doing with regards to Gaza.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, well, really what we're watching is like the disintegration of a lot of the humanitarian people who work in the Biden administration at the actual bureaucratic level, because these people, I've actually met many of them. I kind of went to school with a lot of these types. They really believe in that mission, kind of what we talked previously about with respect to Ukraine. They're probably the most Slavo-Ukraine people out there. Like, this is horrible. This is an illegal invasion. They're big, like, in international law respecters, you know, and all of that. And so for them to watch this kind of revert right back to realpolitik almost in a way, or not even really, but at least in terms of the way the Biden administration justifies the Israeli actions in Gaza, that's a bridge too far for them. I mean, that violates 30 years really of their understanding of the international system. Samantha Power is probably the best example. Now, let me be clear. I think her ideology is deeply destructive and wrong, but she wrote the entire book to justify a doctrine called responsibility to protect, which basically says that the United States, anywhere where humanitarian law, as we understand it, is being violated, should use the force of the U.S. military and of the U.S. empire to work directly to make that happen, regardless of the security realpolitik cost. Now, I deeply, deeply disagree with that, but that ideology, and she herself, is really what rules what I would say is the international relations student and others who kind of came up in that era like I did and ended up working at a place like USAID or for the Biden campaign or anywhere else. So for them, I mean, I get it because I literally know these people. That's why they can't stomach what's happening right now.
The problem with her doctrine is it can be used far too easily and is used far too easily to just engage in interventions wherever the hell the U.S. feels like it, and use these liberal humanitarian justifications for just going in and meddling with other people's countries. So, and again, not because of the humanitarian piece, but because of our own interest as perceived by the elites in this country. Oh, she wrote a book. She got a Pulitzer for this thing. Problem from Hell, America and the Age of Genocide, talking all about, why the problem of genocide persists and how America becomes complicit and ignores these problems, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here you are, suppressing a report on the horrors being inflicted on women, mothers, and children in Gaza. So yeah, anyone with like a shred of self-respect, it becomes a bridge too far. It's one thing probably if the reports, okay, they're being massaged, as that USAID contractor was talking about, some of the language was changed. I could kind of like live with that. But it gets to a point where it's like, no, now this just doesn't reflect reality. Like you're just lying. And it's blatant and it's brazen. Not everyone has completely lost their soul in the way of like Matthew Miller. I don't think John Kirby ever had one. The dude that people outrageously say looks like you, whatever his name is. These other State Department.
That is libel. That is to use their term. That is a blood libel, all right, against me and against our people. He's not even from the same region of India that my family's come. All right, we don't all look the same. That's like saying a dude from West Virginia is the same as some guy from Los Angeles. All right, it ain't the same, folks. All right, well,
the biggest problem with him is that you see these increasingly preposterous situations and things that they try to defend, which are, it's just so brazen that you even have, what's his name, Ed O'Keefe, who's like, how many more charred corpses? Like that's how hard even the mainstream press is going at this point because they're just sick of being lied to and propagandized on a daily basis. At least those of them who even have a shred of self-respect and integrity. So in any case, noteworthy that you continue to have this flood of resignations, and also very noteworthy what they have to say about the direct lies and suppression of accurate information coming out of the Gaza Strip.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.